Hello and welcome to the Friday show. I've got David Rothkopf and a great conversation coming your way. I want to thank everybody who joined me at last night's Hangout. We had 60 people there for a lot of the time, and we hung out for almost 3 hours. It was real fun, real enlightening. Gareth Sever's daughter sang to us, which was fantastic. And if you are a stand-up subscriber, you can go watch it, relive it, listen to it. It exists. It was recorded, at least most of it, and you can access it if you're a subscriber. It'll come in today's show's email. So I hope you enjoy that if you'd like, and I hope to see you next Thursday at our Hangout because it's going to be a very special one. It's going to be a debate watch party. We'll hang out like an hour before the debate starts, an hour after. We'll get some special guests to stop by. It should be great. All right, David Rothkopf coming your way, but just a quick news headline segment. Sometimes I don't do it at all on Friday, but just a few things for you now. We'll start with the weather, which I usually don't do, but hey, listen, when it's affecting me, well, actually, 99 million Americans spent the first day of summer sweltering under excessive heat advisories. In Phoenix, Arizona, temperatures climbed to 112 degrees, but the conditions were even more worrying in areas of the Northeast, like where I live, that are not accustomed to dangerous triple-digit heat. Large swaths of New York and parts of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont were given the highest possible risk rating by a National Weather Service, indicating there was a danger from a rare level of heat. For those in the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic, it was the fourth consecutive day of smothering heat wave caused by a, quote, heat dome, which I don't remember that term being used growing up. Could continue into next week. It's certain that 2024 will be among the 5 warmest years on record, and there's a 50% chance of it being the warmest ever on record, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So that's what I've got for you there. New Mexico wildfires began under high temperatures that have burned more than 23,000 acres, killing 2 people, prompting the evacuation of thousands of residents. Thunderstorms coming in could help control the blazes, but at the risk of flash floods, my lord. And in Mexico, the first named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season is Alberto. It made landfall today as a tropical storm, unleashing heavy rain, flooding, and gusty winds across the middle of the country and into southern Texas. Thinking of you, Texas friends. Forecasters predicted 17 to 25 named storms this year, several more than usual. Climate change is absolutely part of all of this, if you didn't know. Well, let's get to the Supreme Court, which yesterday announced that it was upholding a Trump-era tax provision. The Supreme Court rejected a challenge to a tax on foreign income that helped finance the tax cuts that Donald Trump had imposed in 2017. The ruling, 7-2, avoided introducing what economists warned could have been fiscal chaos if the tax system had been struck down. The justice's decision also previewed what could be its next major tax case, whether Congress can impose what effectively a tax on Americans' wealth. The Supreme Court still has 20 decisions remaining before its term ends in late June or early July. And in Florida, Judge Aileen Cannon, who's overseeing Donald Trump's classified documents, was encouraged, we found out, she was encouraged by 2 colleagues with more experience than her to pass up the assignment when she was given this case, according to people briefed on the conversations. Her colleagues, including the chief judge in the Southern District of Florida, urged her to consider whether it would be better if just another judge took on the high-profile Trump case. Cannon's initial assignment drew attention because she has scant trial experience and had previously shown unusual favor to Trump. Since then, she's made a number of decisions that have prompted second-guessing and criticism, of course, among legal scholars. What else have I got for you here? Let's see. Tik Tok, the social media company, released details about confidential meetings with federal officials to make a case against a U.S. ban. President Biden's lead with women has shrunk, apparently, 13 percentage points to 8 points, according to one poll, while Donald Trump's lead with men is in the double digits. So I'm not sure exactly why that's changed, and hopefully it gets better. Home building fell to its lowest rate in 4 years. RFK Jr. failed to qualify for CNN's presidential debate, which I'll be hosting that debate party for. Vladimir Putin went to Vietnam after North Korea in part of an effort to show that despite Western attempts at isolating him over his invasion of Ukraine, he is still accepted by world leaders. Vietnam has stopped short of voicing support for Russia's war in Ukraine, but also been careful not to alienate Moscow. The White House announced Thursday that it will rush delivery of air defense interceptor missiles to Ukraine by redirecting planned shipments to other allied nations as Washington scrambles to counter increased Russian attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure. And the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, was in Atlanta to promote the Biden administration's effort to quell the import of illegal drugs into the U.S. She announced new sanctions against members of a Mexican drug cartel accused of trafficking fentanyl, cocaine, meth, and migrants through the southern border. And this, a skull found in Montana may indicate a new species of dinosaurs. It's called a Lokiceratops, an herbivore with spectacular brow horns. Hey, they named it after Loki because the skull was bound for a museum in Denmark. The team named the animal after the Norse god Loki. It really does look like the helmet Loki wears, one of the researchers said. Several interesting articles about this. If that's something you're interested in, I highly recommend. All right, those are your headlines. What do I have for you for some sound clips? Well, let's start with this one because more than a couple of you sent me this clip. Shout out to Tina Winsett, but a couple others did as well. This is Reggie Jackson. Yesterday, he was on TV at a baseball game in Birmingham, Alabama. It was Rickwood Field. And you don't hear or see things like this all the time. This went viral last night. This is Reggie Jackson talking during a live national television appearance about the reality of coming up as a young black ball player under Jim Crow. And it is really very powerful.
Reggie, the baton has been passed for over a century here. We've been talking earlier about if it wasn't for the Willie Mays, the Jackie Robinson, the Reggie Jacksons, the three of us wouldn't have an opportunity to play. How emotional is it for you to come back to a play that you played with one of the greatest teams around?
Alex, when people ask me a question like that, it's like coming back here is not easy. The racism that I played here, when I played here, the difficulty of going through different places where we traveled. Fortunately, I had a manager and I had players on the team that helped me get through it. But I wouldn't wish it on anybody. People said to me today, I spoke, and they said, you think you're a better person? You think you won when you played here and conquered? I said, I would never want to do it again. I walked into restaurants and they would point at me and said, can't eat here. I would go to a hotel and they say, then can't stay here. We went to Charlie Finley's country club for a welcome home dinner, and they pointed me out with the N-word. He can't come in here. Finley marched the whole team out. Finally, they let me in there. He said, we're going to go to the diner and eat hamburgers. We'll go where we're wanted. Fortunately, I had a manager, Johnny McNamara, that if I couldn't eat in the place, nobody would eat. We'd get food to travel. If I couldn't stay in a hotel, they'd drive to the next hotel and find a place where I could stay. Had it not been for Raleigh Fingers, Johnny McNamara, Dave Duncan, Joe and Sharon Rudy, I slept on their couch 3-4 nights a week for about a month and a half. Finally, they were threatened that they would burn our apartment complex down unless I got out. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. The year I came here, Bull Connor was the sheriff the year before. And they took minor league baseball out of here because in 1963, the Klan murdered 4 black girls, children, in 11, 12, 14 years old at a church here and never got indicted. They were from the Klan. Life magazine did a story on them like they were being honored. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. At the same time, had it not been for my white friends, had it not been for a white manager, and Rudy, Fingers, and Duncan, and Lee Myers, I would have never made it. I was too physically violent. I was ready to physically fight I'd have got killed here because I'd have beat someone's ass, and you'd have saw me in an oak tree somewhere.
Reggie, I can't even imagine. It's awful you had to go through that, but appreciate you sharing the rawness and the honesty of it with our audience. I mean, really, it's
We love you, Reg.
Yeah. Thank you.
Quick history lesson there.
That's a great history lesson.
You.
Reggie Jackson telling us all about it, preaching. Wow.
Yeah, indeed it was. So I hope that you appreciate that as well, because I thought it was real important and very going viral around the social media. I'm seeing it everywhere. So there you go. One of the most raw and honest things you've heard or seen in a long time. And since they're taking history out of schools, it's always good when it accidentally shows up at a baseball game. All right, well, let's go to CNN, where Boris Sanchez had one of the state legislators from Louisiana who is supportive or co-authored the 10 Commandments in public schools bill. It went about as good as you can expect. Here's a minute or so.
Do you also recognize that the Constitution of this country, its founding document, doesn't include the word God or Jesus or Christianity? And that's for a reason, because the founding fathers founded this country as a secular one. You don't
Boris,
see that?
I bet you CNN pays you a lot of money, and I bet you got a bunch of dollar bills.
What does this have to do with the network that I work for or what I'm getting paid? Don't make this about that. Answer the question. Why did the founding fathers not include God in the Constitution if they wanted this country to be the way that you see it?
Let me finish my statement. And
answer the question and don't make this about me.
In God we trust. Well, make it about me. I got a dollar bill in my wallet. In God we trust is written on that dollar. It is not forcing anybody to believe one viewpoint. It's merely posting a historical reference on the wall for students to read and interpret it if they choose.
All right, there you go. A historical. Okay, so it happened? The 10 Commandments. That was a thing that happened in history. Moses really, okay, well, I guess if you believe that. We had a great talk about it at the Hangout last night. And God We Trust, by the way, was put on the money in like the 50s. So I don't know what her point necessarily was about that. But we had a great conversation at the Hangout. We'll talk about it more with guests, obviously, coming up. Yeah, there you go. All right, now let's get to some comedy, shall we?
Ladies and gentlemen, the energy... You feel that energy? That's summertime energy, and not just any summertime. It is June 20th, and you may not realize this, but this is the summer solstice. Longest day of the year. Now, I never miss a summer solstice because I keep time with the new Apple iHenge. The solstice is the longest day of the year, as I said, and also the official start of summer, which, of course, raises the question, what the hell has the past week been? If not summer. It is so hot in New York that tourists in Times Square are lining up to have their photo taken with Tickle Me Heat Stroke. Oh, the smell. Oh, the smell. You can surf it like a wave. The New York Post recommends celebrating the solstice by feasting al fresco, working outside, or taking a long walk with bare feet. Yes. Today, celebrate the solstice. Tomorrow, celebrate the tetanus.
Well, if you really want to be worried, walking in bare feet, probably poison ivy or ticks, but you shouldn't be worried about any of that. Go ahead, walk in your bare feet and enjoy the beginning of summer. You know what? Let's check in with Jimmy Kimmel as well. He was very funny last night.
President Biden and former President Trump are gearing up for their first debate of the year a week from tonight in Atlanta. Biden has secluded himself at Camp David, where he's preparing for this bout like Rocky Balboa, getting ready for a golf clubber lang. And Trump is hard at work right now deciding whether to go with the scented Aquanet or unscented. You know, despite skipping every other debate, Trump reportedly cannot wait to attack Joe Biden. It's the most he's ever hated someone he wasn't married to. According to Maggie Haberman of the New York Times said Trump knows that he interrupted too much in their last debate, so his game plan for this one is to not do that. And as we all know, he has an uncanny ability to stick to his game plan. His discipline is unmatched. Robert Kennedy Jr. did not make the cut for the debate. Once again, he didn't get a shot. It will be a two-man affair. They already had the coin toss. They tossed a coin, and Biden won the toss, which means he got to choose his podium position. He chose to be on the right, which I think means Trump's back to being a Democrat. I'm not sure, but in the meantime, the race for who will be Trump's number 2 is heating up. Trump is expected to announce his pick for running mate at or just before the convention next month. He's reportedly whittled it down to 8 finalists. One of them is Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio, who's gone full MAGA, despite the fact that he shared many less than complimentary thoughts about Trump in the past.
You said, I'm a never Trump guy, never liked him. Terrible candidate. Idiot if you voted for him. Might be America's Hitler. Might be a cynical a-hole. Cultural heroine. Noxious and reprehensible.
Look, I was wrong about Donald Trump. I didn't think he was going to be a good president, but he was a great president.
I didn't know you meant that, Donald Trump. When I said America's Hitler, I meant that in a good way. It's like, and then we have the governor of North Dakota, a guy named Doug Burgum, who is very wealthy, which Trump loves. And he said some things about Trump, too. And I'm not sure if he's ready for the spotlight just yet.
Governor Burgum, thank you. Good to have you with us today. What goes through your mind when you hear these dire projections about being against the entire system of U.S. government and potentially throwing people in jails and in camps?
No, he just sits there and doesn't answer.
Governor Burgum?
Oh, hi, Martha.
Hi, Martha. His puppeteer was on break, I think.
All right, that's it. That's all I've got for you for today's show opening. Sorry, it's a little brief. Hey, it is Friday, and I'm going to take a little bit of time off this afternoon. How about that? Just tonight. I'm going up to see my buddies from high school. It's our weekend away. I'm only going to be able to spend the one night, but very much looking forward to that. And I'm very much looking forward to sharing my conversation with David Rothkopf right now. David, of course, is one of the smartest guys I know. He can talk about foreign policy, domestic politics, you name it, life. I always love discussing just about anything with him. He's become one of my favorite guests to talk to. He's, of course, a contributor over at The Daily Beast, and you can listen to all of his amazing podcasts over at Deep State Radio. Continue to do excellent work pumping out all kinds of great content, journalism, analysis at Deep State Radio, and now he's launched a Substack as well because apparently it just wasn't enough. David Rothkopf. Substack.com. Need to Know by David Rothkopf. Commentary and analysis on U.S. and international politics and policy and other things you need to know from the host of Deep State Radio and the founder and CEO of the Deep State Radio Network. I love Rothkopf. He is so great. This new Substack is great, and I hope that you will go subscribe. Here is my latest conversation with him, which I think you'll love. Okay, I've just told you all about him and his latest, and he's now launched a Substack, davidrothkopf.substack.com. Need to Know by David Rothkopf, as if you weren't doing enough already. Welcome back.
Well, I'm told that's what the kids are doing.
Yeah, well, it's already really good. I love it. I don't know how you are so prolific, how you're able to pump out so many different pieces. You're still writing for the Daily Beast.
You got to get up in the morning. I literally have started waking up at 5:30 in the morning to do it.
Oh, really? You changed your life for this?
It's changed my life.
And how do you decide what to write about?
Well, I just, things are going on during the day, file away this and that, and then say, well, I have a podcast at 8 o'clock, so it's 6:30, so better pick something now.
Right. Well, I like what you pick. I like your story selection. We can talk about anything, as always, with you. And I wanted to, I was going through your Twitter feed, and you can always get a good read on a person, especially you, with like what they're concerned about a lot right now. And you're tweeting a lot and retweeting and sharing other people's concerns about what's happening at the Washington Post newspaper. You've written about it at Need to Know already. The Washington Post in crisis and more. What do we need to know? I think that you're not supposed to be the story when you are a media outlet. I think that's one rule.
Well, that's one rule, but another rule is to have certain basic ethics. And, the Post brought in a guy to be their publisher, Will Lewis, who came from Fleet Street. There were some stories about him and made people think, I wonder what's going on there. Because, of course, in the UK newspaper business, they had all these stories about, hacking cell phones and working too closely with the Tory government and so forth. And And over time, more and more information has come out that he was deeply, intimately, and completely inappropriately involved in that. And then he's got another guy who was a buddy of his there who he was going to bring in to be the top editor at the Post, still seems to be intending to do that, who was also involved in that kind of stuff. And of course, one such story is bad, two stories is a pattern. And the fact that Jeff Bezos hired these guys knowing this and didn't seem to care about it is not just a warning sign for the Post. And by the way, they were super close to the right in the UK, to the Tory government, to Boris Johnson, which is, worrisome for people that saw the Post as being one of the few big media outlets that was not dominated by, right-wing money. And, the people at the Post are flipping out because, they went there to work at one of the country's most prestigious newspapers, and one that was seen to have very high standards and one that was going to play an absolutely critical role in this election. And look, they haven't done anything to fix it. The stories keep breaking, and now you've got some Post journalists going on TV and saying, I'm not comfortable with this. The sooner Bezos acts, the better. And if he doesn't act, it's bad news for the Post because all of a sudden they're drifting towards Murdoch land.
I thought that Jeff Bezos came out with a full-throated support just a day or so ago at the height of the controversy, one might argue.
Yeah, no, I saw that, but I just, they often react that way. But, I think if he thinks he can ride this out, he's mistaken.
Without, risk of sounding completely ignorant about who should run a newspaper, what's wrong with this guy? He's got a checkered past. Do the top guys at the other major newspapers, whatever's left, do they not have similar controversies in their past? Why is this guy so bad for the Washington Post?
Well, because he's violated basic ethical rules, and that's a no-go if you're, hoping to be a paper of record. Ethics matters everywhere, except apparently the U.S. Supreme Court.
Let me just dispense with another issue real quick. What do you think of the editing of the president, make him look older and more senile? He's an old man. He takes tiny steps. What are we doing?
Okay, look, the right is manufacturing disinformation. If you have a picture of Biden staring off into the distance while everybody else is staring in the opposite direction, you go, oh, he doesn't know where he is. But if you have the full picture, you see that he's talking to some skydivers who just landed and giving them a thumbs up. Well,
what's he looking at? That's a man who just flew out of the sky. That's all.
Yeah, and that's same thing happened with him at an appearance in L.A., I guess, and he had just been talked to by Jimmy Kimmel and, was getting up and he was waving to people in the crowd and they took a picture of him sort of staring off into the crowd. And it was, it was perfectly normal. But that's what context is. Taking things out of context is one of the oldest forms of disinformation. That's what they're doing. And that, is not even really getting us into deep fakes. And that's why, in the course of the past 2 weeks, we've heard a new term, which none of us ever used before the past 2 weeks, cheap fakes. And it's like the hottest buzzword in America, And
the cheap fake is an edited video to make it seem like something happened.
Right, or an edited picture that just, doesn't tell the whole story.
Does it do anything? Is this work?
Well, look, first of all, the big question in the U.S. is not what do these things do to the 40% of people who are going to vote for Trump, if he joins Kristi Noem in killing a bunch of puppies in the middle of the street. They will vote for him no matter what he does. There are a bunch of people who will never vote for him. The question is whether these things have any impact on the people who are swing voters or the people who might just stay home. And, I think, conceivably anything could have impact on them. Is it going to have a big impact? No. Might it have a cumulative impact? Yes. And particularly with this one story that won't seem to go away about Biden's age, even though, Trump is literally leaking porridge out of both of his ear holes. Yeah.
Let's talk about the presidential campaign. We normally don't talk too much about polls, but yay, there's a Fox News poll, and it's got Biden up. And the 538 poll, which I guess is a poll of all the polls or something, it's got Biden up. So I like to talk about it when it's good news. You have part of one of your pieces at your new Substack is that President Biden is going to win in November, I think where is it? I just lost it. You're predicting. Why do you think that at this point? And we're just a week away from the debate. Couldn't anything happen?
Well, yeah, sure. Anything could happen. Okay. But let's examine what we know. First of all, the last time Biden ran against Trump, he beat him. Trump has never won a general election. The Republicans have lost in 2018, 2020, 2022, and in all the intervening special elections that have taken place. The polls have been off and reading too pro-Republican for the past 3 or 4 election cycles. So that's just, that's just information that suggests to you the trend is going to be pro-Biden. Democrats have won the popular vote in 7 out of the last 8, I think, elections in the United States. So Democrats tend to win. Here's something else that may be relevant. Joe Biden is a successful president who's passed more legislation and gotten more done than anybody since maybe Lyndon Johnson. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was rated by, 100 historians or some large group of historians as the worst president in U.S. history. He was impeached twice. Yeah. He's a 34-time convicted felon so far. A judge called him a rapist. Another one has him owing $500 million for fraud. He's cuckoo. He's, mean-spirited. He's a racist. He's a misogynist. He used to hang out with Jeffrey Epstein, fly all over the place with him. There is no reason why Donald Trump should win an election for dog catcher, much less president after having served and shown us what kind of president he would be, and much less against somebody who's a better president. Meanwhile, you've got all this other data, and most of these polls don't really reflect things like likely voters and other things which are trending in Biden's direction. The economy is trending in Biden's direction. Likely developments over the course of the year are trending in Biden's direction. Biden does well in debates. And he's got 2 of those coming up with Trump if Trump shows up for him. And so, how many more reasons do you want? That's a lot of reasons.
You were touting your friend. I guess you're probably friends. You seem like you'd be friends with John Harwood. He's writing over at Zeteo now, Mehdi Hasan's new venture. And he has that great piece about all the former cabinet secretaries. And
44 members of Trump's former cabinet and senior officials have said they won't support him because they think he's dangerous, not because he was mean to them or he smells funny, because they thought he would be dangerous to the United States of America.
I don't know what made them think that. So,
well, I do, I wrote a book about it and a lot of people have read and written books about it. Donald Trump would sit in meetings with them and say, hey, let's have this person assassinated. I was standing in a small group of people at some DC event and somebody said, how do they know that he said that? Yeah. And the person next to me said, I was in the meeting and later I was one of the people he wanted to have assassinated. It was like that. I was like, oh, okay. So, this is real. These people, Jon Kelly listened to Trump call, veterans who'd sacrificed their lives suckers and losers and heard him praise Adolf Hitler. Mark Esper, the defense secretary, had Trump approach him and say, let's pull our troops out of Europe. The Homeland Security folks, and I talked to a bunch of them, sat in multiple meetings where Trump said, let's launch missiles at Mexico. Let's shoot immigrants coming across the Rio Grande. Let's put crocodiles in the Rio Grande.
The crocodile thing, though, he got made fun of, but I don't think that seems like a decent idea that people just poo-pooed a lot.
Yeah. No, well, Pete, I appreciate that you're giving him the benefit of the doubt there. But, killing innocent families and their children or feeding them to giant prehistoric dinosaurs seems a little cruel to me.
You know what? You make a good case. I didn't actually think of it that way. I just thought they'd be scary. And you're right. That is inhuman.
These people come into, there's this thing that people don't really realize, which is that under international law, people actually have the right to seek asylum here. And the reason that they come here is because the place they're coming from is way worse. And, also our country was made great by immigrants. Immigrants are our strength, not our weakness.
And I didn't see if you wrote anything about it. Maybe I missed it. But what about President Biden on immigration? First, this harsh new executive order, I guess, to kind of shut down the border to migrants once it reaches a certain limit. It's hard to understand. And then another announcement, which is completely different, which is about granting citizenship to the spouses of a lot of people who are undocumented if they're married to citizens, I think is how it works. It's like DACA, but the spouses. So two very different things coming out of the White House on immigration. What do you make of it?
Well, I think the president's wanted to try to get his arms around problems in our immigration system for some time. We need more people. We need more enforcement. We obviously would like to make immigration in the United States something that works on a legal basis, that doesn't force people to approach it illegally. He had a bipartisan deal that was led by some of the most conservative folks on the Hill to go and pass the most significant immigration legislation in decades. And Trump literally called up Mike Johnson and said, kill it. I do not want to give him a victory on this issue. So then Biden's like, well, what do I do? And he says, well, there's some things you can do with the executive order to deal with pressures at the border, which he did. But there are a lot of, Trump wants to deport 20 million Americans. He said that over and over again. There aren't 20 million illegal immigrants, by the way, folks. So if he's deporting 20 million, you got to wonder who the 9 million who are not illegal immigrants are. But, and also, I just want you to stop and envision that. Deporting 20 million Americans would mean military mobilization, vehicles driving through your town, picking up people at their homes, throwing them into concentration camps, putting them onto ships and planes and buses and trucks to get them out of here. It would be one of the most horrifying things we've ever seen in our lives. But the challenge is, what do you do with the 11 million folks who are living here? Barack Obama came up with something called DACA, which was, if you're born here, you didn't have any choice in it, then you should have a chance to stay here. That was a good step. Biden just essentially took the law. The law says that if you have lived in this country a long time illegally and you're married to somebody who's a U.S. citizen, there is a path to citizenship. It was just complicated and difficult, and Biden's most recent decision makes it easier and smoother.
Got to ask you about Vladimir Putin's visit to North Korea. That's an interesting relationship they seem to be building. He also, I think he appointed his niece to be defense secretary. So a lot of developments in the war in Ukraine, the Russian invasion. But what does it mean that the Russian leader is visiting North Korean leader? What does China have to say about that? I thought they were trying to keep North Korea in check. And now I hear South Korea is decided, well, we're going to start sending weapons to Ukraine if North Korea is going to give weapons to Russia. What are the interests here? What do we need to know?
Well, the main thing is that the Russians are running out of ammunition. They have certain limited productive capacity, and the rest of the world is saying, we're not going to help you. But North Korea needs some kinds of help and are isolated themselves. And they said, okay, we'll provide you with shells and bullets and other kinds of military stuff that we produce. Now, their stuff, by the way, is not high quality, and a lot of the things they send them don't actually explode when they're supposed to. But it's helpful to the Russians in a war effort, which is not going super well. And the ties between the two countries are worrisome because, if it gives a sense of greater strength to Kim Jong-un, will he challenge the South? Who knows? The Chinese are surely keeping an eye on this. They are saying they are supportive of it, but China's the one with the big border with North Korea, and China's the one that could shut North Korea down in a minute. And so, they're going to play a big role in whatever North Korea's developing posture is. The South Korean response, which is, okay, you give stuff to Russia, well, we're going to give stuff to Ukraine. Well, that's good news for Ukraine because the South Koreans actually produce good stuff as opposed to the bad stuff produced by the North Koreans. As far as this report about, him increasing the amount of nepotism within his inner circle, Putin, by all reports, is quite paranoid at this point, and he doesn't want folks around him. And we've seen, at least one coup attempt that, he doesn't want folks around him that he can't trust. He sits at the end of that long table. Somebody, eats his meals. There are all sorts of reports about Putin doubles that go into crowds, and it's not really Putin. It's some guy who's surgically altered to look like Putin.
I would do that. I would take that gig right now.
Yeah, no. And you look very similar to Putin. By the way, just off the point to take another story from the news, I was looking through Twitter the other day and I saw this picture of a dude and I was like, oh my God, Zelensky looks like shit. And then it was, oh no, that's Justin Timberlake. He was just arrested.
There is a bit of a resemblance.
He had kind of the stubble and he looked kind of bloated. And I was like, geez, that's
leave
bad.
Justin alone. Come on. He couldn't get an Uber, apparently.
Well, yeah, it's too bad. But maybe that's his comeback. Maybe
did he need one? I thought he was doing all right. He seems to be doing all right.
Yeah, well, I don't know. He's this could be tough in his career, but maybe he could do the Zelensky biopic or possibly a musical.
How is the war? What is happening? Where should we?
Well, the Russians have pushed forward. The United States and the Europeans have finally started releasing stuff to Ukrainians. They've stopped the ground gains, so the Russians have shifted their focus to, launching stuff from the air at cities to make them uninhabitable. It's unconscionable, but that's what they're doing. The Russians, of course, at this peace conference that took place last weekend, had sent a message, well, we're happy to have peace so long as we get to keep all the land that we've taken and Ukraine doesn't enter NATO. Both of those things are complete non-starters. Ukraine will end up in NATO. There's a NATO summit in a couple of weeks in Washington, D.C., where there will surely be some announcement that they will move closer to that objective. Meanwhile, you're starting to see some more action in defense of Ukraine. The United States announced today or yesterday that we will be withholding the sale of Patriot missile batteries and other parts of air defense to other countries so that we can redirect them to Ukraine, so that we can strengthen Ukraine in its defense against these Russian attacks. That's also good news for Ukraine. The situation is slightly in Ukraine's favor right now, where it was slightly in Russia's favor for the past 6 months until we released the money. But, we have to see where we are at the end of the summer. Obviously, Russia's big play is to keep things sort of status quo through November.
Right.
Because it's their view that if Donald Trump wins, he will pull the plug on support for Ukraine, which is exactly what he'll do. And they would, then be game over. Game over for Ukraine, maybe game over for NATO, and welcome to the new Iron Curtain 2.0. So that's their big play. And if Joe Biden wins, then I think you can expect that this will get intense. And with a couple of Ukrainian gains, maybe there could be some talk that would be productive next year or year after. By the way, it goes back to your first point where we were talking about cheap fakes. Because this is so important to the Russians, I think we can expect more and more deep fakes, Russian disinformation, Russian active measures to influence the outcome of the presidential election because that's a front in the war in Ukraine.
Right. And American media, certainly right-wing media, will not do anything to... They will invite it. They will invite that interference. Well,
look, they're the big, the Marjorie Taylor Greens and a bunch of the MAGA right, they're pro-Putin. They make no bones about it. They are supporting, one of our principal enemies on the planet Earth.
And lastly, and most lightly, the easiest subject of all is what's going on in the Middle East. This is...
oh, yeah.
So you've written about this. Obviously, Netanyahu dissolved his war cabinet, whatever the hell that means. And then he trashed the American president and secretary of state and whined about not getting weapons. And apparently the White House is like, what the hell are you talking about? And everybody's mad. And now people are saying he should be disinvited because they stupidly invite him to come to Congress again, I guess. And they never should have invited him when Obama was president. I remember that. That was terrible. So what's the latest about this guy and what's happening in Gaza?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things happening in Gaza. The Israelis say that they've achieved most of their goals in Rafah. That's an encouraging sign. Maybe it means the fighting will die down there. Tensions are increasing along Israel's northern border with Hezbollah. That's very worrisome because Hezbollah's got a lot more missiles and capabilities than Hamas does, and a two-front war could be really quite ugly. The Hezbollah released some videos from some of their drones over sensitive Israeli facilities showing, see, we've got eyes on you, which is a little provocative. And, of course, the people of Gaza are suffering. 70% of Gaza's housing stock is gone. The UN has predicted that 1 million people could be starving there in a literal declared famine by sometime in July. And, that's 10 days from now. So that's particularly horrific. There's some debate about how much of the aid that's not getting through to them is because the Israelis have made it hard to get through, and how much is being stolen by Hamas doesn't matter. The Israelis, having invaded Gaza, have an obligation under international law to ensure that the people of Gaza are fed, that they have water, that they have certain kinds of basic necessities. The U.S., by the way, the bridge the pier that the United States built so that food could be brought in was a $223 million complete disaster. Started to sink. It hasn't been usable. It's been a complete mess. Meanwhile, Joe Biden stuck his neck out, really got beat up by a lot of people here in the United States for, sort of unfettered support for Israel. And a lot of people said, hey, Joe, don't do that because Bibi Netanyahu is for Trump. Bibi Netanyahu is the liar. Bibi Netanyahu is a bad person. Bibi Netanyahu is going to ignore your advice. And even after he ignores your advice, and even after you take all the hits for him ignoring your advice and you keep providing with aid, he will screw you. Yeah. And that's exactly what he did. He issued a videotape in English, which meant it was meant for going on American TV. And he said Biden has let him down, even though Biden has supported him more than any other president. And, should this guy be speaking in front of the U.S. Congress? Absolutely not. This is a terrible guy. And how do we know this? Because it happened already. As you said, it happened in 2015. Yeah. He came, was invited, made it partisan, went after Obama. The Obama administration regretted. People said, we'll never do this again. Why did Chuck Schumer agree to this? I don't know. It seems like a terrible idea. And, some people are being more vocal about saying it shouldn't happen, including AOC and some other progressive Democrats. But honestly, no Democrat should want it to happen. No American should want it to happen. This guy is not an ally. The people of Israel, they're an ally. Benjamin Netanyahu, not an ally.
Lastly, what are you doing for the debate next week? You want to come to our party?
Well, that's very, very sweet of you. My dog has asked that I stay here with my dog. My wife will be on international travel someplace. It'll just be me, my dog, a bowl of what he likes.
No, come virtually. It's a virtual party. Just stop by.
Oh, well, maybe I'll stop by.
Yeah, we'll have probably, I don't know, 50, 60 or more people there. And you're on the show all the time. You can come. People stop in for 5 minutes and give us your take before or after. You bring a dog if you want.
Yeah, my dog is a political.
What are you, an introvert or something? You're not going to stop by our virtual party?
I'm shy, very shy. But who knows? Maybe I think this will be a good debate for Biden if Trump shows up.
Why is everybody saying he's not going to show up? I mean, I can understand it could be anything, but I feel like a lot of smart people are hedging that he's going to show up. Why is that?
Well, I think there are two reasons. One is he's going to do badly. He does badly at these things. He's chicken shit. And he has, opted out of things like this in the past. So that's one reason. I think the other reason they do it is to goad Trump, and because, it makes him look like he's chicken shit. And so there's no downside to saying it.
Fair enough. Yeah. No.
Trump, look, here's the reality. We're living in a one-issue country right now. Do you want democracy? Do you not want democracy? And so if you want democracy, you think that's a pretty big deal. And frankly, you do everything in your power all the time to help defeat Donald Trump and to help sustain the institutions we care about. And that's why I'm getting up at 5:30 in the morning and writing a Substack. And I know that's why you're doing your podcast. And, if people can go out and do it at their, backyard barbecues, they should do it because it matters.
Well said. Well done, as always. And I will plug everything again on the way out. The Substack is great, and I'm following, and everybody listening should too. And I will talk to you very soon, I hope. Thank you, sir.
Likewise. Thank you.
And there you go. Rothkopf. Go subscribe to his new Substack. Go say hi to him on Twitter and listen to Deep State Radio. I always appreciate when he joins me. That's all I've got for you today, and I'll be dropping a bunch more. I've got conversations coming up with Washahad Ali, Liz Winstead, comedian Laurie Kilmartin, and Chris Brown from the Brady Organization over the next couple of days. So look for them. Subscribe to the show. Write a rating and review on Spotify and iTunes. And have a great weekend, everybody. Love you guys. Thanks.
When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. Let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change would begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can can see them flee the scene of that experiment. If you stand up, alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up,